The crystalline dome of the grand arena caught the light of 3 suns, casting prismatic patterns across the assembled crowd. Princess Nessa of House Valanthian stood at the edge of the fighting circle, her ceremonial armor gleaming like liquid silver. Intricate patterns of her family's crest spiraled across the breastplate, each line infused with energy that hummed just below the range of hearing. Her violet skin seemed to glow in the refracted light, and her long platinum hair had been braided with threads of pure starlight, a tradition reserved for royal combat demonstrations. She surveyed the crowd with eyes the color of deep amethyst, noting the eager faces of her people. They had come to witness what they believed would be another display of Valanthian superiority. For 3 centuries, her people had dominated this sector of space, their advanced technology and warrior culture making them the unchallenged power. But recently, a new species had emerged from the outer rim. Humans. Aggressive, expansionist, and entirely too confident for a civilization barely a century into space travel. Citizens of Valanthia, Nessa's voice rang out across the arena, amplified by the acoustic perfection of the dome's architecture. Today we demonstrate why our empire stands eternal. Today we show these newcomers their place in the cosmic order. The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices creating a wave of sound that washed over her like warm water. Nessa allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before turning toward the challenger's entrance. When the human finally emerged, she had to suppress a laugh. He was tall for his species, perhaps 6 feet, with broad shoulders that suggested physical strength. His skin was a warm brown, and his dark hair was cut short in a practical style. But it wasn't his appearance that amused her. It was what he carried. 2 wooden sticks connected by a short length of chain dangled from his right hand, looking more like a child's toy than a weapon. "This is Earth's finest?" Nessa called out, her voice dripping with theatrical disdain. "A man with sticks tied together? Perhaps your people should have sent actual warriors instead of entertainers." The human, Marcus Webb, according to the diplomatic brief she had skimmed, didn't rise to the bait. He wore simple dark clothing, practical rather than ceremonial, and his expression remained remarkably calm as he walked to the center of the arena. His brown eyes met hers without fear or deference, which she found oddly unsettling. "Princess Nessa," he said, his voice carrying clearly despite its quiet tone. "I came here as a diplomatic envoy to discuss the mining rights treaty. This combat demonstration wasn't part of the agreed protocol. I respectfully request that we postpone this and return to the negotiating table." Nessa circled him slowly, her armor's energy field creating a faint shimmer in the air around her. "The treaty negotiations will proceed once you've proven yourself worthy of sitting at a table with Valanthian nobility. It is our way. Surely your intelligence briefings mentioned this custom?" "They did," Marcus admitted, shifting his weight slightly. "They also mentioned that most species bring actual combat specialists for this ritual. I'm a negotiator, not a fighter." "Then you should have declined to come." Nessa drew her ceremonial blade, a curved sword that glowed with the same silver energy as her armor. The weapon had been passed down through 7 generations of her family, each wielder adding their own modifications. In her hands, it was practically an extension of her body. "But since you're here, we might as well make this educational. My people need to understand what they're dealing with when it comes to humanity." Marcus sighed and rolled his shoulders, the wooden weapon twirling once in his hand with surprising fluidity. "Last chance to reconsider this, Princess. I really don't want to fight you." "How considerate," Nessa replied, her smile predatory. "Unfortunately, what you want is irrelevant." She struck without further warning, her blade whistling through the air in a precisely calculated arc aimed at his shoulder. It would have been a disabling blow, painful but not permanently damaging. She had no desire to kill him, merely to humiliate his species, But her blade met only empty air. Marcus had moved with surprising speed, stepping inside her guard rather than away from it. His wooden weapon remained hanging loosely at his side, unthreatening. Nessa recovered quickly, spinning into a follow-up strike that should have caught him off balance. Again, nothing but air. The crowd's cheers began to sound uncertain. This wasn't going according to script. Nessa was supposed to dominate immediately, to showcase Valanthian superiority. Instead, she was chasing shadows, while the humans simply evaded, making her look clumsy. Stand still and fight. Nessa snarled, launching a combination attack that had won her 3 consecutive tournament championships. You first, Marcus replied. And suddenly, his weapon was in motion. What happened next would be analyzed in slow motion for years afterward. The wooden sticks became a blur, spinning in patterns that seemed to defy physics. Nessa attempted to press her attack, but somehow the simple wooden weapon was everywhere at once. Deflecting her blade with precise little impacts, it sent jarring vibrations up her arm. Then Marcus went on the offensive, but not in the way she expected. Instead of striking at her directly, his weapon snaked around her sword arm. She felt the chain wrap once, twice, then a sharp pull that yanked her forward. Before she could activate her armor's defensive systems, the wooden stick struck her breastplate with a sharp crack. Nothing should have penetrated her armor. The energy field alone should have deflected a wooden weapon. But she felt something give, heard a sound like ice cracking. Marcus didn't stop. His weapon moved with clinical precision, striking specific points on her armor. Each impact sent spiderwebs of fractures spreading across the silver surface. Energy sparked and hissed as the carefully calibrated systems began to fail. Nessa tried to counter, tried to bring her superior strength and technology to bear, but Marcus flowed around every attack like water. His wooden weapon found the joint in her shoulder guard, struck twice in rapid succession, and the entire pauldron shattered into fragments. The crowd had gone silent. 60 seconds after the fight began, Nessa found herself on her knees in the center of the arena, her supposedly impenetrable armor lying in pieces around her. Only her undersuit remained intact, the thin material offering no protection at all. Blue energy flickered and died in the scattered fragments. Like the last gasps of dying stars. Marcus stood over her, the wooden weapon hanging at his side, his breathing barely elevated. Your armor's power nodes form a specific pattern, he said quietly, for her ears only. Strike them in sequence, and the entire system cascades into failure. Beautiful engineering, actually, but predictable once you understand the underlying architecture. Nessa looked up at him, seeing him clearly for the first time. Not as a lesser species or a diplomatic obstacle, but as a person who had just systematically dismantled everything she thought she knew about combat and superiority. His eyes held no triumph, no mockery, just a quiet dignity that made something in her chest constrict uncomfortably. How? She managed to ask, her voice barely a whisper. Because I studied, Marcus replied, extending his hand to help her up. I researched your culture, your technology, your fighting styles. That's what diplomats do. We prepare. As her fingers closed around his hand, feeling the warmth of his human skin against her own, Nessa felt the ground shift beneath her in ways that had nothing to do with her physical defeat. The crowd remained silent, shocked into speechlessness by what they'd witnessed. And somewhere in that silence, in that moment of contact between their hands, something began that neither of them had anticipated, something that would prove far more dangerous than any arena combat. The Council of High Nobles convened within an hour of Nessa's defeat, their faces carved from stone and displeasure. She stood before them in a fresh ceremonial robe, the deep purple fabric embroidered with silver thread that caught the light from the chamber's floating orbs. Every inch of her posture spoke of royal dignity, but inside, humiliation burned like acid. Explain yourself, demanded High Noble Torin, His ancient face creased with lines of disapproval. His age-spotted hands gripped the arms of his council seat as if he might launch himself at her. You have made a spectacle of our greatest military technology. You have shown weakness before a species we barely understand. I underestimated him, Nessa said, forcing the words out despite how they tasted. It was a tactical error. One I will not repeat. A tactical error? Lady Serene's melodious voice dripped with venom. You challenged their diplomat to single combat, assured us of easy victory, and then had your armor dismantled like a child's puzzle box. The human now knows our defenses can be defeated with wooden sticks. Not wooden sticks, Nessa corrected, her jaw tight. Precisely applied force, based on extensive research and pattern analysis. There's a significant difference. The council chamber fell into uncomfortable silence. 7 pairs of eyes studied her with varying degrees of suspicion and concern. Finally, High Noble Torin leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Perhaps the princess has developed an admiration for human tactics, he said slowly. Or perhaps for the human himself. Nessa's hands clenched beneath the flowing sleeves of her robe. I admire competence, regardless of its source. Continuing to underestimate them would be strategic suicide. Nevertheless, interrupted Chancellor Vex, a wizened woman whose mind remained sharp as broken glass despite her centuries of life, we must salvage these negotiations. The Earth Confederation controls resources we desperately need. Their expansion threatens to encircle our territory within a generation. We cannot afford to have them as enemies. What would you have me do? Nessa asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. The human Marcus Webb has requested a private audience with you, Chancellor Vex said, watching Nessa's reaction carefully. You will grant it. You will learn what he knows about our defenses, what Earth truly wants from these negotiations. Use whatever means necessary to secure favorable terms. The implication hung in the air like poison gas. Nessa's violet skin flushed darker with anger, but she bowed her head in acceptance. As the Council commands. See that you don't fail us again, Torin said dismissively. You are dismissed. The royal gardens of Valanthia Prime were considered one of the wonders of the sector. Exotic flora from 100 worlds grew in carefully maintained environmental zones, creating a tapestry of colors and scents that overwhelmed the senses. Some plants glowed with bioluminescence. Others sang in ultrasonic frequencies that created a peaceful hum just below conscious hearing. And still others moved with unsettling intelligence, tracking visitors with leaves that resembled eyes. Nessa found Marcus in the Terran section, a recent addition that contained plants from Earth and its colonies. He sat on a bench carved from imported oak, examining a flowering vine that produced blooms the color of fresh blood. That's a crimson nightshade, Nessa announced her presence. The pollen causes paralysis in most Valanthian physiology. A single breath can immobilize someone my size for hours. Marcus pulled his hand back quickly, then smiled ruefully. Thanks for the warning. I was just admiring the color. Reminds me of roses from Earth, though these are much more aggressive looking. Nessa took a seat across from him, maintaining a formal distance despite the garden's intimate atmosphere. The air smelled of strange combinations, ozone and honey, metallic flowers, and something that reminded her of lightning strikes. You requested this meeting, she said, keeping her voice neutral. Speak your purpose. Marcus leaned back against the bench, studying her with those disconcertingly direct brown eyes. I want to understand why you forced that fight. Your people initiated contact with Earth, seeking trade agreements and mutual defense treaties. Yet the first thing you do is try to humiliate our representative. Why? It is Valanthian custom to test potential allies, Nessa replied automatically. The answer she'd prepared. That's nonsense, Marcus said bluntly. And something about his directness caught her off guard. Your intelligence on humanity is too detailed for you not to know. We'd find ritual combat provocative. You wanted that fight specifically. I want to know why. Nessa felt her carefully constructed diplomatic masks slip slightly. Most species approached her with either fear or obsequious flattery. This human's straightforward honesty was unsettling in ways she hadn't anticipated. Your kind expands too quickly, she said finally, deciding that partial truth was safer than obvious lies. In 3 generations, you've gone from a single world to nearly 50 colonies. You make alliances with species we've spent centuries trying to bring into our sphere of influence. You disrupt the established order. Marcus nodded slowly, processing this. And you thought beating me would slow human expansion? Send a message? I thought demonstrating Valenthian superiority would remind everyone who controls this sector, Nessa admitted. Instead, I demonstrated our vulnerability. So where does that leave us? Marcus asked, and something in his tone made her look at him more carefully. He sat comfortably in an alien garden, surrounded by potentially lethal plants, alert but not fearful. His posture suggested someone who could handle himself in any environment. The simple clothing he wore somehow made him seem more dignified than if he dressed in elaborate finery. It leaves us at an impasse, Nessa said carefully. My council still wants this alliance despite my miscalculation. And what do you want, Princess? The question struck deeper than she'd expected. What did she want? The alliance made strategic sense. The humans controlled resources Valenthia needed, and their military capabilities, while less advanced, were growing at an alarming rate. But something else nagged at her, something she wasn't ready to examine closely. I want to understand, she said finally. How did you learn to exploit our armor's weaknesses? Our design specifications are among our most closely guarded secrets. Marcus smiled slightly, and she noticed how it changed his entire face, softening features that could otherwise seem stern. Not as well guarded as you think. But I didn't hack your systems or steal plans if that's what you're worried about. Then how? I watched recordings of Valanthian warriors in combat, Marcus explained. Public arena matches, ceremonial demonstrations, even entertainment broadcasts. I analyzed the energy patterns when armor took damage, mapped the power node configurations, studied how your warriors moved in different tactical situations. Basic observational analysis. You learned all that from recordings? Nessa couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. Humans are good at pattern recognition, Marcus said with a shrug. It's how we survived on Earth before we had advanced technology. We noticed details, adapted quickly, found weaknesses in things stronger than us. It's practically built into our psychology. Nessa absorbed this, a grudging respect forming despite her best efforts to maintain emotional distance. And the weapon? The nunchaku. Why bring such an archaic tool to a diplomatic mission? I practice with them for meditation and focus, Marcus said, his expression becoming more contemplative. They teach patience, precision, control, all useful qualities for a negotiator. I never intended to use them in actual combat during this trip, yet you wielded them with remarkable skill. 15 years of daily practice, he admitted modestly. Though I'll confess, I've never actually fought anyone with them before today. Most of my training has been solo forms and controlled sparring. You had never used them in real combat? Nessa felt her eyes widen. But you moved like a master warrior. I moved like someone who spent 15 years learning a disciplined practice, Marcus corrected gently. There's a difference between martial artistry and actual warfare. I just got lucky that the skills translated when I needed them. A comfortable silence fell between them, surprising in its lack of tension. Nessa found herself studying his face more carefully. The way his eyes crinkled slightly at the corners when he smiled, the strong line of his jaw, the way he moved with unconscious grace, even while sitting still. Would you show me? She asked suddenly, surprising herself. Show you what? How you use them. The nunchaku. She gestured vaguely, trying to sound casual. Not in combat, but as meditation. The way you practice. Marcus raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by the request. You want me to teach you? I want to understand, Nessa corrected, though even to her own ears the distinction felt meaningless. If I'm to negotiate with humans, I should understand your culture better. Your practices. He studied her for a long moment, and she had the uncomfortable feeling that he could see right through her diplomatic justifications to something she wasn't ready to admit even to herself. All right, Marcus said finally, standing and offering his hand. But not here among the poisonous plants. Is there a training facility we could use? Nessa took his hand to rise, and the contact sent an unexpected current through her. His skin was warmer than hers, rougher in texture, but not unpleasant. She released his hand quickly, perhaps too quickly, and led him toward the palace. The royal training chamber occupied an entire wing of the palace. A vast space with adjustable gravity, holographic opponents, and weapon racks containing everything from ancient swords to modern plasma rifles. Nessa dismissed the guards and activated the privacy shields, telling herself it was simply to avoid interruption during this cultural exchange. Marcus removed his funnel jacket, revealing a simple black shirt beneath that showed the definition of his shoulders and arms. From an inner pocket, he produced his nunchaku, the wood smooth and dark with age and use. The first lesson, he said, beginning to move slowly, is that these aren't about strength. They're about focus and flow. He began a demonstration, starting with simple movements that gradually grew more complex. The wooden sticks flowed around his body in patterns that seemed almost hypnotic, creating figure eights and spirals in the air. Nessa watched, mesmerized by the grace of his movements, the way his entire body moved as one unit. The second lesson, Marcus continued, the nunchaku picking up speed, is that control comes from here? He tapped his abdomen with his free hand. From your center, not your hands or arms. The weapon is just an extension of your core movement. Without thinking about it, Nessa stepped closer. May I try? Marcus paused mid-motion, then held out the weapon. Their fingers brushed as she took it, and this time the contact lasted a heartbeat longer than necessary. The nunchaku felt lighter than she'd expected, the wood smooth and warm from his hands. She attempted to mimic the simple pattern he'd shown, and nearly hit herself in the face. The weapon spun out of control, and she had to activate her enhanced reflexes to avoid injury. Marcus laughed, not mockingly, but with genuine amusement that somehow didn't feel insulting. Everyone does that the first time. Here, let me show you. He moved behind her, and suddenly his presence filled her awareness. He was close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his human body, smell something clean and slightly spicy that must be his natural scent. His hands closed over hers, adjusting her grip, and she felt her breath catch. Feel the rhythm, Marcus said softly, his voice near her ear. Don't fight the momentum. Guide it, like water flowing around rocks. His hands moved hers through the motion, slow and controlled. The nunchaku swung in a gentle arc, and Nessa found herself focusing on the sensation of his hands over hers, more than the weapon itself. His skin was rough with calluses, evidence of years of practice, but his touch was gentle. Like this? She asked, her voice coming out slightly breathless. Exactly like that, Marcus said, stepping back. The sudden loss of his warmth left her feeling oddly bereft. Now try it on your own. Nessa executed the movement, this time successfully completing the arc without injury. A small triumph, but it made her smile. You're a natural, Marcus observed, approval clear in his eyes. Most people take days to get that motion right. I've trained in combat since I was old enough to hold a blade, Nessa replied, attempting another pattern. Though I'll admit, your approach is very different from Valanthian martial arts. We focus on power and precision. This feels more like ... dancing. That's not a bad comparison, Marcus said, moving to stand beside her. The martial aspect comes later, but the foundation is meditation in motion. It teaches you to be present in the moment, to move without thinking. Something shifted in the air between them as they stood side by side in the training chamber. Not quite friendship, not quite attraction, but something new and undefined. A possibility that neither had anticipated when Nessa had challenged him in the arena just hours before. "Marcus," Nessa began, not sure what she wanted to say, only knowing that she wanted to continue this conversation, this connection. The training chamber doors burst open with a pneumatic hiss that shattered the intimate moment like glass. Captain Revik of the Royal Guard strode in, his angular face set in grim lines. Behind him, 2 guards stood at attention. "Princess," Revik said, bowing formally but without his usual warmth. "We've received an emergency transmission from the frontier. The mining colony on Terminus 7 is under attack." The weapon slipped from Nessa's suddenly numb fingers, clattering against the training floor. "Attack? By whom?" "Unknown vessels," Revik reported, his jaw tight. "Dozens of them. They've already destroyed the orbital defense platforms and are bombarding the surface installations. Governor Talish is requesting immediate military assistance." Marcus stepped forward, his diplomatic training clearly kicking in despite the alarm in his eyes. "Terminus 7. That's on your border with the Krithan sovereignty, isn't it?" Nessa shot him a sharp look, surprised and slightly disturbed by how much he knew about Valanthian territory. "You're well informed for a diplomat." "It's my job to know the political landscape," Marcus replied without apology. "The Krithan have been quiet for decades. Why would they suddenly attack a mining colony?" "We don't know it's them," Nessa said, though the timing seemed far too suspicious to be coincidental. She turned to Captain Revik, her mind already shifting into tactical mode. "Prepare my flagship. I'm leaving immediately." "Princess," Revik objected, his hand moving to his weapon belt in an unconscious gesture of concern. "The Council has ordered you to remain here and continue negotiations while they coordinate the military response." "The Council is not standing here," Nessa cut him off, her voice dropping into the tone she used to command troops. "Terminus 7 is under my family's direct protection. I will not abandon them while politicians debate optimal response strategies. Prepare my ship." "That's an order, Captain." Revik hesitated for only a moment before bowing his head in acceptance. "Yes, Your Highness. The Starfire will be ready within the hour." Nessa nodded curtly, then turned back to Marcus, expecting to see him retreating toward the diplomatic quarters where he would be safe. Instead, he was already picking up his jacket and sliding it on, his expression determined. "I'm coming with you," Marcus said, as if it were already decided and not up for debate. "This isn't your fight, human," Nessa said. No part of her wanted him to argue, wanted him to insist. "This is a Valanthian matter. If the Krithan are involved, it absolutely is my fight," Marcus countered, his brown eyes meeting her violet ones with unwavering intensity. "They've been probing Earth colonies too, testing our defenses. And if it's not the Krithan, if it's some new threat, then Earth needs to know about it. We're neighbors in this sector, whether our governments have signed treaties or not." He moved closer, and Nessa found she couldn't look away from his gaze. "Besides," he added more quietly, "you might need someone who's good at finding weaknesses in seemingly impenetrable defenses. Despite everything, despite the emergency and the uncertainty and the weight of responsibility settling onto her shoulders." Nessa felt a smile tug at her lips. Something warm unfurled in her chest, something dangerous and thrilling. "Very well," she said, making a decision that would change everything. "But on my ship, You follow my orders without question. Understood? Wouldn't dream of doing otherwise, Princess, Marcus replied. And the way he said her title made it sound less like a formality and more like something intimate. As they strode from the training chamber, Nessa glanced down and realized she was still holding his nunchaku. She started to offer them back, but Marcus noticed and shook his head. Keep them, he said. Something tells me you might need them before this is over. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Nessa understood that what had begun in the arena and continued in the garden had transformed into something neither of them could control or predict. They were no longer just a princess and a diplomat. They were two people standing on the edge of something vast and unknown. And neither of them was backing away.